Most people cannot stay silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because silence feels like losing. So they explain themselves, they defend themselves, they announce every goal, every plan, every victory, every disappointment. They feel an irresistible urge to let the world know what they're doing. But have you ever noticed that the most transformative seasons of your life usually happened in private? No applause, no audience, no validation, just you, quietly becoming someone new. There is something deeply psychological about silence. It unsettles people because silence creates mystery, and the human mind hates mystery. It wants answers, it wants certainty, it wants to know where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, whether you're winning, whether you're struggling. Silence denies people that certainty, and strangely, it also denies your own ego something it craves. Attention, recognition, the satisfaction of being seen before the work has even been completed. That is why silence is so difficult, because it forces you to answer one uncomfortable question. If nobody applauded me, would I still become this person? If nobody liked the post, would I still put in the work? If nobody knew what I was building, would I keep building? Those questions separate ambition from identity, because many people do not actually want growth, they want to be seen growing. There is a difference. One transforms your life, the other only transforms your image. And maybe that is why so many people remain stuck. They spend so much energy managing perception that they have very little energy left for transformation. Every opinion becomes important, every criticism demands a response, every misunderstanding feels like an emergency. And their attention, after a while, stops belonging to themselves. It belongs to everyone else. And wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Imagine trying to build a house while stopping every 5 minutes to ask strangers whether they approve of the foundation. You would never finish, not because you lacked ability, but because your focus was constantly being interrupted. The same thing happens psychologically. Every explanation costs attention. Every unnecessary argument costs attention. Every attempt to prove yourself costs attention. And attention is the most expensive currency you will ever spend. The people who build extraordinary lives understand something most never learn. Your life moves in the direction of your attention, not your intentions, your attention. So if your attention is constantly consumed by people, their opinions become your reality. If your attention returns to yourself, your own life begins expanding again. So now we are going to explore why the seasons that feel the quietest often become the seasons that change you the most. Why focusing on yourself is not selfish, why silence is not weakness, and why the moment you stop announcing your transformation is often the exact moment it truly begins. The world profits from your distraction. There is one resource more valuable than money, more valuable than talent, more valuable than intelligence: your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Think about it. Every skill you have ever developed was first given your attention. Every relationship that became meaningful received your attention. Every insecurity that became stronger also received your attention. Attention is psychological water. Whatever you pour it into grows, which means if you spend your days watering resentment, resentment grows. If you water comparison, comparison grows. If you water distraction, distraction becomes your personality. Most people never consciously decide where their attention goes. They simply react. A notification appears, they react. Someone criticizes them, they react. Someone misunderstands them, they react. Someone succeeds, they compare. Someone insults them, they defend. Someone ignores them, they obsess. Slowly, your entire inner world becomes a reaction to someone else's behavior. And then you wonder why you feel so disconnected from yourself, because every day pieces of your attention are being donated to people who have contributed nothing to the life they claim they want. Imagine waking up every morning with 100 coins, not coins of money, coins of attention. Every unnecessary argument costs you 5. Every hour spent comparing yourself costs you 10. Every attempt to convince someone to see your worth costs you 20. Every grudge you replay costs you another 10. By the end of the day, you have almost nothing left. Nothing left to build, nothing left to create, nothing left to dream, nothing left to heal. Then you tell yourself, I don't have the energy. Maybe it is not that you don't have energy. Maybe you have been spending it everywhere except where it matters. Now here's the fascinating part. Most people are not afraid of speaking. They are afraid of what silence might reveal. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you discover how addicted you were to being understood. When you stop posting every achievement, you discover how attached you were to external validation. When you stop responding to every criticism, you discover how much of your identity depended on other people's opinions. Silence is a mirror. It reveals the psychological needs you didn't know were controlling you. The need to be liked, the need to be right, the need to be included, the need to be noticed, the need to have the final word. And maybe that is why so few people can remain silent. Because silence doesn't just hide you from the world, it introduces you to yourself. One day you become tired, not of people, of noise. The noise of proving, the noise of comparing, the noise of defending, the noise of explaining, the noise of performing, and almost without realizing it, you begin to withdraw your attention. Not because you've become cold, because you've become selective. You realize that every yes to distraction is a no to your own becoming. So you stop feeding every argument. You stop attending every fight. You stop trying to convince people who have already decided who you are. You stop mistaking visibility for value. And something remarkable begins to happen. The energy you once spent managing perception begins returning to your own life. You think more clearly. You create more deeply. You notice more. You worry less. Not because life became quieter, but because you did. When you stop chasing, life begins chasing you. There is a strange shift that happens when you stop making yourself available to everything. People notice, not because you became louder, because you became quieter. You stopped explaining, you stopped defending, you stopped announcing every move, and suddenly everyone became curious. But this isn't about becoming mysterious, it's about becoming occupied with your own life. Because the truth is, the people who have the least time to prove themselves are usually the ones actually building something. They are too busy becoming to constantly tell you who they are becoming. And somewhere along the way, our culture confused visibility with progress. We began believing that if people couldn't see the work, then perhaps the work wasn't happening. So we announce our goals, our routines, our diets, our businesses, our relationships, our healing. Everything becomes a performance. And the performance becomes so exhausting that there is barely any energy left for the transformation itself. Here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't always know the difference between achievement and recognition. The moment people praise you for something you haven't yet accomplished, your brain receives a small reward, a feeling of progress, a feeling of significance. But feelings can be deceptive, because being congratulated for the journey is not the same as completing it. The applause comes early, the discipline leaves quietly, and slowly, your identity becomes attached to talking about change instead of living it. That is why some of the greatest transformations happen in silence. No audience, no validation, just repetition, day after day, week after week, month after month, long after the excitement has disappeared. Because discipline does not need witnesses, it only needs commitment. There is another reason silence is powerful. It protects your energy. Every argument asks for it. Every unnecessary explanation asks for it. Every person determined to misunderstand you asks for it. The question is, must you always give it? There is incredible freedom in realizing not every opinion deserves your response. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every invitation deserves your presence. And not every battle is yours to fight. Maturity is not winning every argument. It is recognizing which arguments are too expensive to enter. Because every battle has a cost, even the ones you win. I'll say that again. Every battle has a cost, even the ones you win. Peace, attention, time, emotional energy. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply walking away with your mind intact. The person you are becoming requires solitude. Think back to every season that changed you, really changed you. Was it loud or was it quiet? Was there an audience or was it just you, alone, doing the difficult work that nobody applauded? Healing is quiet. Discipline is quiet. Reading is quiet. Learning is quiet. Prayer is quiet. Reflection is quiet. Character is built quietly. Roots do not grow above the ground, yet they determine the height of the tree. The same is true for human beings. The parts of you that nobody sees eventually become the parts of you that nobody can ignore. That is why you must stop measuring your progress by applause. Measure it by your habits. Measure it by your peace. Measure it by how often you keep promises to yourself, because those quiet promises, repeated long enough, become character, and character always speaks louder than words. There is a moment so subtle that you almost miss it. Nothing around you has changed. You wake up in the same house, you drive the same roads, you speak to many of the same people, yet everything feels different. Not because your world changed, but because you did. You no longer wake up wondering who has texted you, who has posted, who has unfollowed you, who is talking about you, who misunderstood you. Instead, you wake up asking yourself a far better question. What kind of person am I becoming today? That single question redirects your entire life, because the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your attention. And for the first time, your attention belongs to you again. People often say the moment I focused on myself, everything fell into place. But is that really what happened? Or did something else happen? Maybe life did not suddenly become easier. Maybe you simply stopped creating unnecessary chaos. Think about it. How much suffering comes from trying to control other people, trying to make someone love you, trying to make someone understand you, trying to make someone choose you, trying to make someone see your value, trying to make everyone agree with you. That is exhausting. And maybe the peace you are looking for has never been hiding. It has simply been buried beneath all the energy you spent trying to manage what was never yours to manage. The opinions of others, the choices of others, the emotions of others, the lives of others. You were carrying responsibilities that never belonged to you. No wonder you felt so heavy. One of the greatest signs of psychological maturity is no longer needing everyone to understand you, because eventually you realize something liberating. People do not see you as you are. They see you as they are, through their fears, their beliefs, their experiences, their wounds. You could explain yourself perfectly and still be misunderstood, not because you failed, but because human beings do not hear objectively, they hear selectively. Once you understand that, you stop exhausting yourself trying to manage other people's perceptions. You let your life be your explanation, not your words, your consistency, not your arguments, your character, not your image. Because character always outlives reputation. Reputation depends on what people say. Character depends on who you become when nobody is watching. The irony is, the less you chase attention, the more people begin noticing you. Not because you were trying to be noticed, but because excellence is difficult to ignore. Confidence is difficult to ignore. Peace is difficult to ignore. A person who is deeply rooted within themselves changes the atmosphere without saying much at all. They don't rush, they don't compete, they don't seek permission, they don't announce every intention. They simply continue becoming, and eventually the results speak so loudly that explanations become unnecessary. Maybe your next level is not hidden inside another strategy or another book or another opinion. Maybe it is hidden inside your attention, waiting for you to bring it home. Because the life you want to build requires the attention you keep giving away. To people who have already left, to arguments that ended months ago, to criticism from people you would not trade lives with, to comparisons that have never made you stronger. Imagine if tomorrow morning you withdrew all of that energy. Imagine if every ounce of attention returned to your own growth, your own discipline, your own healing, your own purpose. How different would your life look 1 year from now? Because everything does not fall into place by accident. It falls into place when you stop scattering your attention across everything that was never meant to carry it. When you become less interested in being seen and more interested in becoming someone worth seeing, that is when life begins responding differently. Not because the world changed, but because you finally did. It has been my pleasure as always to sit with you. This has been the Human Mirror. Look closely, you were never invisible. I'll see you in the next reflection.